Why do we want you to start off with a good understanding of what good food is versus bad food? Well, it all comes to viewing food instead of just to eat something and more as a functional resource, like fuel for our body. Guarantee you at some point have heard the analogy that your food is your fuel, just like fuel is used for a car engine. It will keep it running. Sand is also an archaeological substance like fuel. If you poured sand into your gas tank, it definitely wouldn't work. I'm a nutrition coach, I'm not a mechanic. So in essence, this video is going to be covering the bare bone basics of what good fuel versus bad fuel is and what constitutes the difference. To start figuring that out, we're going to start first with 5 questions you can ask yourself about the food that you're eating to see how good your fuel might be. Question number 1, how nutrient dense is your food? Well, nutrient dense is a complex term, but what it means is if, for example, you could have a potato chip or that was just about the size of a deck of cards, which is a large potato chip, but it's the size of a deck of cards, or you had a salmon that you could eat that was the size of a deck of cards, and you had a little piece of salmon and you had a piece of potato chip, and you were on an island and you needed to take care of yourself. You probably wouldn't pick the potato chip, you probably would pick the fish. Why is that? Because the fish is more nutrient dense than the potato chip, meaning that given 2 of the same size of something or the same mass, the potato chip has less beneficial things in it. By nutrients, I mean vitamins, minerals, and things like antioxidants. Has less of that in it, but the salmon has more. So, when picking between foods, you want to try to opt for foods that are more nutrient dense. I'm not saying not to eat potato chips, I eat them all the time. But most of my food has a lot of vitamins naturally in it, has a lot of minerals naturally in it that my body needs, and has a lot of antioxidants in it. Now, those 3 components are vital for us because they help our bodies in biochemical processes. For example, a conveyor belt. And you know the idea of a business working in sync. Everybody's got their own jobs and that conveyor belt keeps going on. If you take a few of those people that are running one part of that conveyor belt out, it's quite possible that the entire system would come crashing down. This is the idea of vitamins. They do play a vital role in your body's ability to carry out specific and important tasks, such as protein synthesis, making protein for your body. That's very important. Digesting, metabolizing food. You need to be able to absorb certain nutrients, and you can't do it without vitamins for some of them. So that's just a little bit of an overview of why you need to be opting for nutrient-dense food in the first place. Question number 2 to ask yourself, how bioavailable is the food that I'm eating? There's another term for you. Bioavailable basically means how able is my body to absorb the food that I am ingesting. Some foods are less bioavailable than others, meaning our body isn't able as easily to absorb and metabolize the nutrients that come from that food. Obviously, we want to give our body the benefit of the doubt and give it something that it can absorb a lot easier, right? That's the case with our foods. I will say as a caveat, if you're choosing to be on a vegan or a vegetarian diet, a lot of your proteins will be considered less bioavailable. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be vegan or vegetarian. That just means that you should consider eating more protein than normal, just so that way your body has a higher chance of absorbing more protein. Question number 3 to ask yourself about the food you're eating. How close was it to the sun? Now, I don't mean literally. Let me explain an analogy. Let's say you're having a grass-fed beef burger, and that cow is eating delicious grass that is soaking up rays of sunshine that it has access to. That grass has the potential to have tons of vital nutrients in it coming out of it, and it's nice and fresh. The cow can eat that, and the cow also has access to the sun, which provides a very vital vitamin called vitamin D3 that helps in its bone health and its metabolism and aids in digestion, among other things. Now that cow, of course, has to have its life ended, and you're gonna eat that burger from that grass-fed, grass-finished cow. On the other hand, let's say that there is a cow that is locked away from the sun and it is eating corn, mash, food that has been heavily processed that used to be around the sun, but it's been quite some time because it's just been stowed away in the dark, fermenting. just to make it easier so that way the cow can just fatten up fast. And then the cow eventually goes to slaughter, and now you've got a burger that was corn-fed, and the cow did not have access to the sun, didn't have all the vital nutrients it needed, and didn't have the best life. It was pretty stressful. How do I know all this? I grew up on a farm, around farms, but I never actually did any of that stuff. I just watched it all. Now, comparing those two foods, they will naturally have scientifically different amounts of vital nutrients. For example, omega-3, which is a very important fat, is much higher in the grass-fed, grass-finished cow and is a very important fat for our brain. The animals, including chickens that don't have as much access to the sun and are not grass-fed, grass-finished type animals, they will have a lot less omega-3 and significantly less vitamins and nutrients from it. Don't believe me? Here's a research article. You can check it in the description below. So that's just the example if you are a meat eater, which I will say I am, and I prefer fish primarily. Being able to have your food less processed is the key to that one. If you have a bunch of bagged foods that are heavily processed, that have to go through tons of machines before they get to your table, you probably have a bulk of your food that has less proximity to the sun. So consider, how processed is your food? It could determine how nutrient dense that food is, depending on your answer. So that's why it's a good thing to ask yourself that question. Question number 4 to ask yourself, is it too much of one thing that I'm eating? Now this one can be complex because you might say that, hey, I'm eating apples. Oh, apples are healthy. But if you only ate apples and nothing else, you would have a problem because you're not supposed to only just eat one thing. So I use that nutritious apple as an example. Why is it that I can't just eat that one thing, just that one apple? Well, obviously we do have a balance of specific nutrients and different macronutrients that our bodies need, protein, carbs, and fats. I have another video where I cover the macronutrients and give a brief overview of those macronutrients and why they're important for your body. We do need a balance of different things. So that's why it's important not to have too much of one thing. And if you're mostly just eating carbohydrates, you're missing out on other benefits that come from making sure that you eat enough protein. I also mean substances as well. Make sure you're not getting too much of one thing. And by substances, of course, you should eliminate all toxic substances for your body, but there's one in particular, such as actually 2. Sugar and salt are 2 that you can keep in mind of having too much of. The average American consumes about 3,400 milligrams of sodium, whereas the upper limit recommended by the American Heart Association is about 2,300 milligrams of sodium. Same thing with sugar. There's a conservative limit on sugar by the American Heart Association of 6 teaspoons for women and 9 teaspoons for men. Most of us ingest far more than that per day for sugar. So that's another point of the make sure you're not eating too much of one thing. Question number 5, is it good for you? Now I say this one with emphasis on you because there's some foods that are healthy for some people but not good for others. For example, the egg. It's highly recommended. It's a great source of protein and has a lot of great vitamins and qualities about it. And it's also a great source of omega-3. However, if you're someone like me with an egg allergy, it's not something you should force yourself to eat. You can get omega-3 from other sources such as salmon. So make sure that you know your own body. And if you're on my website right now as part of my nutrition course, or you've taken any of my master classes, you may already have seen the elimination diet protocol that you can try to follow so that way you can figure out if you might have food allergies and sensitivities. These are prevalent in society. Food sensitivities ranging between 15 and 20% of the population, and true food allergies that cause anaphylactic shock, which you probably know by now if you have that one, is about 4% of the population for children and 4% for adults. So if you're on my course, you will end up seeing if you have some foods that cause issues. We're going to take you through an elimination diet. Otherwise, you can check out one of my master classes on the topic as well. Links are in the description for both. And thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.